On the 31st of March 2026, in the 100th minute of extra time, a defender named Axel Tuanzebe headed a cross into the net in Guadalajara, Mexico. The final whistle blew. The Democratic Republic of Congo, a country of 111 million people, had qualified for the World Cup. For the first time since 1974, 52 years. When that whistle blew in Guadalajara, it was already night in Kinshasa. It did not matter. 17 million people poured into the streets. The celebrations were described by those who witnessed them as the largest public gathering in the country since independence in 1960. People who had not been born the last time the Leopards played a World Cup match were dancing in the street with their grandparents who had watched Zaire in West Germany. The world and the World Cup draw and the football media suddenly working out where Congo is on a map immediately had questions. Who are these people? What country is this? Why had they been away for 52 years? And what happened in between? Those are the right questions. And the answers, the real answers, not the football ones, are more extraordinary than anything that happened in Guadalajara. Because the DR Congo did not simply disappear from football for 52 years. The country that the Leopards represent went through things in that half-century that make a World Cup absence the least interesting part of the story. A king who killed millions for rubber, a leader who tried to change all of that and was murdered in 75 days, a dictator who stole $5 billion, a music that conquered the world twice, and $24 trillion sitting underground while the people who own that ground earn $400 a year. To understand why Kinshasa erupted the way it did on the 31st of March, to understand why a football result felt like something bigger, you need to understand this country. And to understand this country, you need to start where it starts, with the river. The Congo River is not simply a feature of this country. It is the reason the country exists, the reason the country is the shape it is, and the reason the country's history has unfolded the way it has. Everything that has happened in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the colonialism, the independence, the wars, the music, the World Cup return, is downstream of this river, literally and figuratively. The numbers alone are extraordinary. The Congo River stretches approximately 4,700 kilometers, making it Africa's second longest river and one of the longest in the world. Its discharge is the second largest on Earth, behind only the Amazon. At certain points, it is more than 16 kilometers wide, and it is the deepest river anywhere on the planet. In some stretches, the riverbed lies more than 220 meters below the surface. Nothing else comes close. The river crosses the equator not once but twice, a geographic rarity that gives the Congo Basin a permanent supply of rainfall, making it home to the world's second largest tropical rainforest after the Amazon. The forest stores an estimated 135 billion tons of carbon, making the Congo Basin one of the most important climate stabilizers on the planet. But here is the feature that shaped everything. The river is not freely navigable from the coast. Roughly 300 kilometers from the Atlantic Ocean, the Congo drops through a series of spectacular but impassable rapids, the Livingston Falls, that blocked ocean-going ships from reaching the interior for centuries. The Congo Basin was effectively sealed off from easy outside contact until the late 19th century. That isolation shaped the culture, the languages, the political structures of the peoples who lived here. The Congo Basin is home to some of the most extraordinary human and biological diversity on Earth, over 250 distinct ethnic groups, over 700 languages and dialects. The river connected them internally, even as it protected them from external access. When the river finally was penetrated, and we will come to that, what the outsiders found was not a blank slate. They found a continent's worth of civilization, resource, and complexity compressed into a single river basin. And what they did to it, once they found it, is the story that explains everything that comes after. In 1885, at the Berlin Conference, the meeting at which European powers divided Africa among themselves, without a single African present, King Leopold II of Belgium was granted personal sovereignty over the Congo Basin, not as a Belgian colony, as his personal property, a territory 76 times the size of Belgium, handed to one man. Leopold presented himself to the world as a humanitarian. He told the Berlin Conference that he wanted to bring civilization and free trade to the Congo. He established an organization called the International Association of the Congo, which sounded philanthropic and was in fact a front for extraction. The world's great powers believed him, or chose to. What Leopold actually built in the Congo was one of the most brutal extractive enterprises in human history. The Congo Free State, his personal property, was run on a simple principle: force the Congolese people to produce rubber and ivory under threat of death and keep the profits. Every village was given a rubber quota. Failure to meet the quota was punished by the severing of hands, documented so extensively by missionaries, journalists, and diplomats that the evidence is beyond any historical dispute. Leopold's force publique, his private army, was authorized to cut off the hands of Congolese people as proof that bullets used in punishment had not been wasted. The severed hands became a currency of compliance. Baskets of hands were brought to administrators as evidence of discipline. Children had their hands cut off. Women were taken hostage to force their husbands to meet rubber quotas. The death toll from Leopold's Congo Free State, from violence, from starvation, from disease caused by the systematic destruction of communities and food systems, is estimated by historians at approximately 10 million people, half the population of the territory at the time. When the scale of the horror was exposed, by journalist E.D. Morel, by British consul Roger Casement, by missionaries who documented what they witnessed, the resulting international campaign against Leopold became one of the world's first human rights movements. In 1908, under international pressure, Belgium took the Congo from Leopold and made it a formal colony. Leopold died in 1909, enormously wealthy. The Belgian colonial period that followed was less overtly murderous than Leopold's, but it maintained the fundamental architecture of extraction: Congolese labor for Belgian and European profit, Congolese resources flowing outward, Congolese people systematically denied education, political rights, and economic agency. By 1960, after 80 years of colonial rule, there were fewer than 30 university graduates in the entire country of 15 million people. On the 30th of June 1960, the Democratic Republic of the Congo became independent. Their first prime minister was Patrice Lumumba, 34 years old, a former postal clerk who had become the most electrifying political speaker in the country, a Pan-Africanist who believed with complete sincerity that Congolese mineral wealth should benefit the Congolese people. He had just led his party to victory in the country's first democratic election. At the independence ceremony, King Baudouin of Belgium praised the work of his ancestor Leopold II, the man who had killed 10 million Congolese, as the founder of the new state. Lumumba, who was not scheduled to speak, took the podium unannounced and said what nobody else dared to say. He spoke about the forced labor, the racial humiliation, the laws that had forbidden Africans from certain streets and establishments, and the unpaid work extracted from millions of human beings for European profit. We have known ironies, insults, blows that we endured morning, noon, and evening because we are Negroes. Who will forget that to a black one said tu, not because he was a friend, but because the more honorable vous was reserved for whites alone? Patrice Lumumba, Independence Day speech, June 30th, 1960. Belgium's response was swift and decisive. 5 days after independence, the army mutinied. Belgium sent troops back without the Congolese government's consent. Katanga province, home to the Congo's greatest mineral wealth, backed by Belgian mining corporations, declared secession. Lumumba, desperate to preserve his country's territorial integrity, asked the Soviet Union for help when the United Nations refused to intervene. In Washington, this triggered an alarm. President Eisenhower, at a National Security Council meeting on the 18th of August 1960, less than 7 weeks after independence, said something, in the words of the official note-taker, to the effect that Lumumba should be eliminated. The CIA's director, Alan Dulles, was allocated $100,000 to accomplish this. A CIA chemist was dispatched to Kinshasa with specially designed poison. On the 17th of January 1961, 75 days after Lumumba was removed from power, he was driven to a clearing in Katanga, put up against a tree in the headlights of a vehicle, and shot. Belgian officers were present. Belgian officers were in command. His body was dismembered and dissolved in sulfuric acid. For 60 years, his family had nothing to bury. The only physical trace that survived was a single gold-capped tooth. Belgium returned it to his family in June 2022, 61 years later. Pick up your phone. There is a mineral inside it called cobalt. Cobalt is the essential component of every lithium-ion battery, every electric vehicle, every laptop, every smartphone on Earth. 70% of all the cobalt in the world is in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Congo also holds the uranium that was used to build the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It holds enormous reserves of copper, coltan, essential for mobile phones, diamonds, gold, manganese, tin, and rare earth elements. The total estimated value of the Congo's mineral wealth has been placed at over $24 trillion. No other country on Earth comes close. And now look at where the Democratic Republic of the Congo sits on the United Nations Human Development Index, the measure of health, education, and standard of living. 180 out of 193 countries. Average annual income, approximately $400. Life expectancy, 58 years. How does a country with $24 trillion underground produce an average income of $400 a year? The answer is not complicated, but it is brutal. 3 structural causes. First, Leopold's extraction economy, which ran for 23 years and killed approximately 10 million people, did not build an economy. It destroyed one. The institutions, the infrastructure, the human capital that would have existed in the Congo without Leopold's Congo Free State, the schools, the hospitals, the political structures, the trade networks, were systematically obliterated to make rubber collection more efficient. Second, Mobutu. After Lumumba's assassination, the CIA's man took power and held it for 32 years. He renamed the country Zaire, renamed himself, looted the treasury of an estimated $4 to $15 billion, and ran what economists call a kleptocracy, a system in which the primary function of the state is to extract wealth for the ruler and his associates. Mobutu did not invest in Congo. He invested in his Swiss bank accounts and his private palaces. By the time he fell in 1997, the country's infrastructure had largely collapsed. Third, the wars. 2 devastating regional wars followed Mobutu's fall, the First and Second Congo Wars, the latter of which is sometimes called Africa's World War, involving armies from 9 countries fighting across Congolese territory. The Second Congo War, from 1998 to 2003, directly or indirectly killed an estimated 5 million people, the deadliest conflict anywhere in the world since World War II. Armed groups continue to fight over mineral-rich territories in the eastern Congo to this day, in 2026, as the Leopards prepare for the World Cup. The cobalt in your phone, the coltan in your laptop, the supply chains that power the global digital economy run through a country that has been systematically stripped of its ability to capture the value of what it produces. Leopold built that system. Mobutu maintained it. The wars perpetuate it. And the $24 trillion sits underground, while the people who own that ground earn $400 a year. Everything we have discussed so far, Leopold, Lumumba, Mobutu, the wealth paradox, is the story of what was taken from the Congo. But there is another story, the story of what was not taken, what could not be taken, what the Congo built for itself and gave to the world in defiance of everything being done to it. That story is Congolese Rumba. It begins in the Kingdom of Congo, the pre-colonial Bantu-speaking civilization that occupied much of what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo, Angola, and the Republic of Congo before European contact. The Kingdom of Congo was one of the most sophisticated polities in sub-Saharan Africa, a centralized state with its own currency, diplomatic relations with Portugal, and a complex social and artistic culture that included music and dance traditions that had developed over centuries. When the Portuguese established slave trading along the Congolese coast in the 15th and 16th centuries, they took enslaved Congolese people to Cuba along with everything else. Those enslaved people carried their music with them. In Cuba, Congolese rhythms and song structures mixed with Spanish musical forms over generations and became, by the early 20th century, the Cuban sun, the rhythmic foundation that would eventually give birth to salsa, mambo, and the entire edifice of Latin popular music. Then, in the 1920s and 1930s, Cuban music began to be broadcast by radio and distributed by record across Africa. And when Congolese people heard it, Cuban sun, this music that had been forged from the transformation of Congolese rhythms in the crucible of the Caribbean, they heard something in it, something familiar, something ancestral. They called it Nkumba, a rumba that was coming home. Congolese musicians took the Cuban form back and transformed it. They added the electric guitar, which became the defining instrument of the Congolese sound, played in an interlocking style called soukous. They added horns. They added intricate vocal harmonies. They developed a distinctive guitar technique in which 2 or 3 guitarists play interlocking rhythmic patterns that create a tapestry of rhythm and melody simultaneously. By the 1950s, Congolese rumba, centered in Kinshasa and Brazzaville, was the most popular music in Africa. The orchestras of Franco and TPOK Jazz, African Jazz, and dozens of other bands packed stadiums and filled the airwaves across the continent. The music traveled with the independence movement movements. It was the soundtrack of African liberation, of joy, of collective identity in the face of colonial denigration. In December 2021, UNESCO inscribed Congolese Rumba on its representative list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity. The citation noted that the music represented community memory, social cohesion, and creative expression across generations. A music born in captivity, returned from exile, inscribed among humanity's treasures. The last time this country played in a World Cup, it was called Zaire. The man who gave it that name, Mobutu Sese Seko, had renamed the Congo River, renamed the capital from Leopoldville to Kinshasa, renamed himself from Joseph Désiré Mobutu, and was at that moment stealing approximately $5 billion from the treasury of one of the most resource-rich nations on earth. The 1974 squad carried that context onto every pitch. The results at the 1974 World Cup were brutal. 2-0 to Scotland, 9-0 to Yugoslavia, 3-0 to Brazil. 14 goals conceded, none scored. The most remembered moment, a player named Mwepu Ilunga running from the defensive wall during a Brazilian free kick to kick the ball away, was interpreted as confusion by most observers. Former players have since suggested it was something closer to frustration or deliberate protest, or the act of men who knew something had gone very wrong with their campaign. When they returned home, Mobutu reportedly withheld promised bonuses and punished players. And then, nothing. For 52 years, through Mobutu's kleptocracy, through his overthrow in 1997, through the wars that followed, through the renaming from Zaire back to the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Leopards could not return to the World Cup. The infrastructure had collapsed. The institutions had been looted. The talent that existed was scattered across European academies and diaspora communities. The reasons those academies exist, as the wealth paradox section explained, are part of the same story. The 2026 team that ended that absence is a direct product of all of it. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, born in London to Congolese parents, switched allegiance from England. Axel Tuanzebe, the man whose header ended 52 years, also switched from England. Yoan Wissa, Cedric Bakambu, players built in the French and Belgian football systems that the colonial migration networks created. The squad that represents the Democratic Republic of Congo in 2026 is, in its personnel, a living map of Congolese history. Colonial displacement made the diaspora. The diaspora made the players. The players came home. The qualification campaign was the hardest route any team at this tournament has taken, second in their African group behind Senegal. Then a CAF playoff, beat Cameroon and beat Nigeria. Then the Intercontinental playoff against Jamaica, 0-0 after 90 minutes, 100 minutes played, Axel Tuanzebe at the back post, the header, the net, and then Kinshasa. You have seen this before. These are the same streets you saw at the beginning of this episode, the same celebration, the same faces, the same Kinshasa night. But you have also seen what we went through to get here. You have seen the river that protected its people for centuries. You have seen the king who eventually got past it. You have seen the man who stood up in 75 days of power and told the truth to a king's face. You have seen what sits underground and what has been taken. You have heard the music that came back from Cuba and changed the world. And now you understand what those faces were feeling when that header hit the net in Guadalajara. It was not just a football result. It was 111 million people saying, we are still here, through Leopold, through Mobutu, through the wars, through 52 years of World Cup absences, still here, still dancing, and this time we are back on the biggest stage in the world. The Leopards carry everything this country has been through onto that pitch. Every match they play in this World Cup is played for the millions who danced in Kinshasa on the 31st of March. For the generations who watched Zaire get beaten 9-0 in 1974 and waited half a century for a different story. For the miners in Katanga whose cobalt is in the phones of the people watching the tournament. For the Rumba that started as a dance in the Kingdom of Congo and came back from Cuba as the sound of African independence. Tell me in the comments where you were when Tuanzebe scored. If you are Congolese, in Kinshasa, in Paris, in Brussels, in London, anywhere in the world, I want to know what that 100th minute felt like. And if you had never heard of this country before, the World Cup draw put them on your screen. Now you know. Now you know why it matters. This is kingdoms and empires. The Congo waited 52 years. The header landed, and the history that was always behind it. Finally, the world is paying attention.